Washakie, warrior turned to peace, taking a stand in history. Washakie, a warrior, father, chief, and leader. Chief Washakie of the Eastern Shoshone Indian tribe is world-renowned and has impacted countless lives. Though sources differ about some of the details of his life, all agree that Chief Washakie did what he felt was best for his people, whether that meant fighting for his people and territory, promoting education, or taking a stand for peace. Chief Washakie was wise, brave, and made decisions for the well-being of his people. His life, which some believe spanned 3 centuries, including the entire 19th century, took place in central Wyoming. He is known for taking stands for the greater good of his tribe, for his reservation, and for the rights of all Native Americans. Yet, the most important thing that Chief Washakie stood for later in his life was peace. Washakie knew that while some conflicts could only be solved through battle, there were also times when war was not the answer. Although the world remembers him as a peacemaker, before this part of his personality became prominent, he was a warrior.
It was a very difficult time, as there were thousands and thousands of non-Indians coming through their traditional territory, the hunting grounds. And so Washakie had a very difficult job to do, to keep peace, but at the same time, to stand up and fight when he had to.
Washakie was born to a Lamhi Shoshone mother and a Flathead Salish father in Bitterroot Valley, Montana. His name at birth was Bihak Rawan, which translates to smell of sugar. As a young boy, his father was killed in a raid, which resulted in Washakie joining a group of Bannocks who traveled around Idaho. This eventually led him to the Eastern Shoshone in Wyoming, where he was recognized as an outstanding warrior, and would later become chief.
But he was a ferocious warrior, and to become a leader in the Shoshones, you had to kill people. You know, not deer and not elk, you had to kill people in hand-to-hand combat to prove that you were an effective war leader who could protect your wives and your daughters and all of your relatives and all your followers.
During the 1820s to the 1830s, there were many trappers who traveled through the territory of the Eastern Shoshones and Wyoming. Washakie created an amicable relationship with many of the trappers through training and communication. Some of them included Jim Bridger, Ed Farlow, Jedediah Smith, Simino, and Kit Carson. The Shoshones' friendly dealings with the trappers allowed them to participate in rendezvous, which included trading with hundreds of local trappers and other tribes. Eventually, the rendezvous ceased because the other tribes started fighting the white settlers. Chief Washakie then had to decide what stand he would take. Would he also fight the whites, or would he remain peaceful?
It wasn't that he was afraid to fight. It was the moment. The what's happening at that time. If you could see, especially where the tribe was located on the southeastern Wyoming, you know, the 3 main trails going west, going through his territory, and the coming of the railroad as well as the telegraph. Yeah, he can maintain peace. You know, he could tell his warriors that they weren't going to fight. It wasn't going to. In fact, he saved he was able to prevent an attack on the Arapahoes when they first came. So he was a very strong person, known for making great decisions for the benefit of the Eastern Shoshone people.
Washakie declared to his young warriors, "I am not only your chief, but an old man and your father. It therefore becomes my duty to advise you. I know how hard it is for youth to listen to the voice of age. The old blood creeps with the snail, but the young blood leaps with the torrent. Once I was young, my sons, and thought as you do now. Then my people were strong, and my voice was ever for war. You must not fight the whites. I not only advise against it, I forbid it." As a result of his decision, the Shoshone took a stand to be kind and friendly with the whites. The United States government had superintendents of the reservation who were in charge of communicating and reporting to the government on the Native Americans' behavior and adjustment to whites living in the area. In 1850, Brigham Young was appointed by the government to be one of the superintendents, and he became a close friend of Washakie's. In 1857, the United States government declared war on the Mormon immigrants, and what would become known as the Utah War. The government asked the Eastern Shoshone for some of their warriors. Washakie decided to take a stand for peace and chose not to fight on either side.
If we looked back at the type of leader that he was very spiritual, very healthy, very wise. He wasn't afraid, and he really knew not to just be an enemy to everybody. I mean, he was very wise in knowing we need to be friends, we need to protect, we need to learn from others. And so I think that's one good thing, that if we look back at some of the decisions he made as a leader, it would definitely help our leaders today. I also am very, very grateful, and I thank our Creator and our Heavenly Father every single day for the reservation that we're on, because we're the only tribe in the whole United States that got to select where we wanted to be. Most tribes were forced to be on a particular reservation, and Chief Washakie was able to say, this is where I'd like my people.
Washakie signed the 1868 Treaty of Fort Bridger, which guaranteed the Shoshones the capability to move back to the lands of their forefathers in the Wind Rivers, where they resided before enemy tribes had pushed them out towards the Green River area. By signing on July 4, 1868, Washakie was promising that the Eastern Shoshones would give up the old ways of Native American life, and his people would become tillers of soil, in exchange for their former territory, which was filled with an abundance of natural resources. In 1878, the U.S. government decided to separate the former Allied tribes, the Northern Cheyenne, the Northern Arapaho, and the Sioux, because together they were too much of a threat. They placed the Shoshones' former enemy, the Arapaho, on the Shoshone Wind River Reservation. Despite their protests, the Arapaho lived in close contact with the Eastern Shoshone people. Washakie stated that the Arapaho could remain there temporarily, but that they would have to move later on. Yet, the Arapaho were not moved and still live there to this day.
Washakie was one of those people that that whatever it was that he believed, whatever it was that he knew that was important as far as our values go, he was able to take a stand for those things. And he not only did he take a stand and emulate those things in his personal life, but he wanted to make sure that he was able to pass those on to future generations through his family.
As Washakie was growing older, he started losing his memory and capability to care for himself. At the end of the 1800s, he was cared for by his daughter-in-law, Josie Washakie. Chief Washakie passed away on February 20th, 1900, and obituaries appeared in newspapers across the country. He was honored by a full military funeral at his beloved Fort Washakie. Still today, he is the only Native American chief to be honored with such respects by the American government.
What he took a stand for was to protect his people. He took a stand so that they could live here in peace.
Chief Washakie stood for peace by living with his people's enemy on the same land and working with the United States government to allow white settlers to migrate into the Western Territory. He wouldn't sacrifice his people to fight a war he didn't believe in fighting. The effect of Washakie's stand for peace, coupled with his desire that all of his people should be educated, has resulted in the preservation of the Eastern Shoshone's culture to this modern day.
When I think about him, it's very humble. It's a very humble feeling. Some people might have that opportunity in their lifetime to be a descendant of such a great person, and you may say you could be proud, but I am in a way that it's very humbling that somebody could understand to follow the way that people should be today. There's so much greed, so much emphasis on things that's not important. When I think about him, I'm humble, and there's almost not any words that could express the honor in being his descendant.